O zaman devam edelim mi kaldığımız yerden? Ne olduysa artık bilemiyorum. Bakalım devam edecek. Neredeyiz? Kolona koleksiyonunu incele. Testleri yaptık mı şimdi? Yapmışız. Bu ne abi? Çocuk mu var senin? Yaş kaçtı? Çocukla ilgilen, boş ver ya. Çocuk candır ya. Bu daha önemli.
Are you aware of the Divine
Oo,
Syndicate?
doğum günün kutlu olsun.
Define what? Is this a joke?
No, I am quite serious.
Kaç yaşında?
A ridiculous name. Anyway, I have never heard of this syndicate.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation.
Güzel. Benim de birisi 7 yaşında, birisi de 10.
Locked.
Pardon, 8-11. Birisi 8, birisi 11. Şimdi burası kilitli dedi. Şuradan gelelim. Tabii. Bir kız bir oğlan var benimle. Şunda tekrar konuşalım.
Tell me, have you ever heard of the Divine Syndicate?
No, I cannot say that I have.
Thank you, young man.
Bölüm o
We shall
zaman.
see you again soon.
Az önce yayında sıkıntı oldu. Onu 5. bölüm yapalım. Bu bölümü de 6. bölüm olarak şey yaparız, atarız. Çünkü kesinti oldu. 6. bölüme başlamış olalım şu an. Vallahi hiçbir zaman rahat değil ki ya. Hiçbir zaman değil. Hiçbir zaman rahat olmuyor.
According to this, they have light and moisture control in some parts of the building. Water lily greenhouse.
Şimdi ne diyor bize burada? Kolonun koleksiyonunu incele. Son sergilenen çalınmış bitkileri bul. Çocuk bu saat olmuş uyumadı mı ya? Bunu bakmıştık. Kırılma noktası.
A fragment of marble, most likely
Heykel
chipped from a
veya düşten
statue or
kopmuş.
sculpture. Part of this greenhouse was emptied and thoroughly cleaned.
Şuraya bakalım. Adamın öldüğü yeri incele diyordu bize. Nerede ölmüştü adam?
A ventilation system. It should regulate the temperature of the staff buildings.
Burası locked'tı galiba.
Locked.
What should we do next, Holmes?
Buraya baktık ya. Burada başka bir şey olduğunu zannetmiyorum. Şu adamın öldüğü yere gidelim ya. Ha, şurası.
This sign is
Aa,
broken.
kan var
Something
burada.
heavy was dropped upon it.
Ona bakmadık.
Blood. Someone fell violently against this sign, and they were injured in the clash. Most likely a head wound. All the clues around here are quite suspicious. I need my imagination to make sense of it all. Vazoyu devirdi gelirken. Oraya düşüp kafaya mı vurdu? Bir dakika. Ne oldu şimdi? Ha, tamam. O zaman şöyle yapacağız. Watson, bir çıkar mısın canım benim? Bir bu. Bir bu. Ya o değil. Şunu indir. Vazo 2 3. This reconstruction reveals a disturbing fact. Montague Dunn damaged the door of the Colonial Collection Room.
He was in a panic, or the door was locked. Was it an accident, or a murder then, I wonder?
O zaman otopsi yapacağız. Aynen. Bakacağız. Bakacağız. Otopsi gerçekleştir. O zaman al. Go to Scotland Yard. Lantajdan'ın ölümünün yeniden araştırılması rahatsız verici bir gerçeği ortaya çıkardı. Koloni koleksiyon odasının parçalanmış panik onu ele geçirmiş veya kapı kilitliymiş. Evet. İkincisi ise ölüm önceden tasarlanmış bir cinayet olabilir. Scotland Yard'a gidelim.
I asked Inspector Lestrade to take Montague Dunn's body to Scotland Yard.
It's ready for autopsy then.
First of all, let us carry out an external examination. There is an injury to the skull, most probably caused by the fall in the water lily greenhouse. The vessels and the pupil of the eye appear quite normal. The air from the lungs carries a faint floral aroma. There are no suspicious marks upon the chest. Let us finish our external examination so that we can proceed with the autopsy. Nothing suspicious here. No redness, stings, or bruises. Now, let us examine the internal organs.
Ne? Hayda.
The heart's blood vessels show no pathological signs.
Kalp damarları. Döndür. Yukarı aşağıya gitmiyor. Sağ sol.
The heart tissue shows no visible pathological signs. The lungs are congested and edematous.
Ödemli. Bitkilerden kaynaklı herhalde. Aha. Hasarlı kısım.
The tissue on the inferior lobe of the right lung is damaged, most probably caused by toxins from an unknown plant.
Yani muhtemelen.
The liver is enlarged. It would seem that he was suffering from an alcohol addiction. The liver tissue is brown. There are no visible pathological signs.
Mide.
The stomach tissues show no visible pathological signs. There is a small amount of content. It appears that he breakfasted lightly, only a short while before his death. My suspicions have been substantiated. Montague Dunn, the director of Kew Gardens, died from poisoning. Plant poisoning, to be more exact.
You mean
Allah
Yes,
Allah.
it is murder.
we should inform
Cinayet mi?
Hmm?
Lestrade?
Yes, but do remember, Watson, that I discovered the murder. The challenge is mine.
The challenge, Holmes?
We need to locate that deadly plant. Such a perfect murder appeals to me.
Murder of any kind appeals to you. Is that all we need to do?
No, we also have the people working at Kew Gardens. Martin Hamish and the son of the victim, Albert Dunn.
And also Miss White, of whom we spoke with Mr. Hamish. Should we bring them all here for interrogation?
No, a few innocuous questions at Kew will suffice, as well as a discreet delve into their personal affairs. Yes, Watson, it is time now to open the doors.
Even those in the staff building. I suppose that is necessary.
We should also be concerned with the victim himself. After all, we don't know very much about Montague Dunn.
You're enjoying this already, aren't you?
More than a little.
Psikopat Sherlock. Bulunuyoruz. Ha. Hırsızlık ve cinayet. Zehirlenmiş. Kim zehirledi bunu?
Let's go to the evidence room, Holmes.
Kanıt odasına gidelim. Aynen gidelim.
Locked. This watch is of great value. A membership card for the London Crest Club. A beautiful feather pen of a good make.
Wayne ve oğulları. Baskı şirketinin müdürü Bay Wayne. Dostum, Kew bahçelerindeki büyük sergi için hazırladığım posterler çok güzeller. Fakat bütün personelden bahsetmek kesinlikle gereksiz. Sadece benim adım yeterli olacaktır. Montague. Wayne ve oğullarına yazmış. Dan. Başka bir şey yok mu? Şununla tekrar konuşsak mı?
Mr. Hamish, can you explain to us what happened to the colonial collection? It seems somewhat depleted.
But, most likely maintenance work, tidying up.
You're not sure then? But you're the deputy director.
Well, I am busy. I cannot be everywhere at once.
No.
As deputy director, how was your relationship with Montague Dunn?
To be honest with you, Mr. Holmes, it could have been better. You see, every Tuesday he would carry out his inspection of the gardens, but it was solely to make an impression, great pretense that he cared at all. He would give out absurd orders, ignoring anyone else's opinion. He would then disappear for the rest of the week. He was what some might call a man of
Bu
action.
gıcık ona.
I'd say rather he was overzealous and chaotic. So after all, it was no wonder, perhaps, that he ended up like that, if you take into consideration his kind of lifestyle.
Tell me, Mr. Hamish, do you grow the more deadly variety of plant here?
You mean insectivorous? Yes, but nothing larger than that.
Mr. Hamish, can you tell us who holds the keys to the locked greenhouses?
That would be Albert, Mr. Dunn's son. Yes, Albert keeps all the keys, and one can only imagine why.
What do you mean?
Well, he was never interested in Kew Gardens before, and now all of a sudden he is trying to act as if he owns the place. I think he wants to take over the management here. He'd do better to leave that to me. He has no experience. No, none at all.
Bu serada sürekli bir çekememezlik var ya.
You mentioned that Mr. Dunn led a particular lifestyle.
Well, it's no secret that he enjoyed, celebrating, shall we say? He was a member of the London Smart Set. He was famous for it. That
And
he had an eye for the ladies, to put it mildly, Mr. Holmes.
what is your opinion of Albert as a student of botany?
He's useless. I often tell him so, and I can only give him cleaning tasks. Botany is not his life's work, and his father well knew it. He was furious about it.
He was.
Oh yes, he forced his son to work here, and he never missed an opportunity to criticize him publicly.
Are you able to elaborate on that?
Well, for example, with our last exhibition here, Mr. Dunn had Albert make a presentation speech. But then, while the lad was speaking, Mr. Dunn interrupted him, asking him difficult questions, making him look like a failure. It was with the intention of making a fool of him, Mr. Holmes.
That must have been terribly humiliating.
Yes, he was crushed, and he had to leave. Everybody was making fun of poor Albert. That is, except for Miss Margaret White,
Oldu mu
who
acaba?
was such a nice lady and who always takes pity on Albert.
You mentioned a Miss White. Would you tell us more about her?
She is a student who works here part-time. She is quite charming indeed. She possesses a great talent for botany. You should take a look at some of her experiments that she carried out in the laboratory. Ah, if only she weren't
Bunu
so
hasta
naive.
galiba.
Why naive?
The way she used to flutter around Mr. Montague Dunn. And why, he couldn't help but be flattered by all her attention. How could an intelligent woman such as Miss White not see through his game? I can only scratch my head and wonder.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation.
Oğlunun yanına gidelim. Buradan mıydı o?
I imagine that your relationship with your father may have been a strained one.
Yes. I cannot say that he was a kind man, for he never listened to me at all. He forced me to work here. But now, after his death, I've been pondering it over. Perhaps he wasn't so wrong about me after all. I have to follow his path, and I have to manage Kew Gardens. And I can do it. I can be as good as any other who works here.
We noticed that a part of the colonial collection has been cleared.
Ah. At the moment, I'm just dealing with the storage room. I don't know much about the other rooms.
Do you hold the keys to all of these locked doors?
Yes, you can have them. But I cannot give you the keys to the cloakroom. The employees' effects are private. I am sure you understand.
Who is Miss Margaret White?
Ah, she is the young lady who studies with me. She visits here sometimes to help out with the greenhouses. In fact, she should be here today. She wanted to work at the seed house. That's the small greenhouse across from the large glass house.
Küçük serada.
Would you please tell us about Martin Hamish, the deputy director?
Well, I have to tell you that Mr. Hamish is not and has never been the deputy director of Kew Gardens. My father would not have tolerated it.
Indeed? Well, that is most interesting. He told us that he was.
Yes, because he believes that the management should be passed down to him now that my father is dead. But in actual fact, Mr. Hamish only has the honour of being the garden's longest-serving employee. In fact, if we are to think logically at all, it should be me who takes over the management of Kew Gardens.
Do you not have a good relationship with Mr. Hamish?
I suppose so. But we have very little in common. Mr. Hamish loves his plants and Kew Gardens, and I cannot say that I share his passion.
I see. And how was his relationship with your father?
Oh, he hated my father. It was obvious. He would be furious whenever my father boasted of Kew Gardens in the newspapers or at conferences. He was convinced that my father was stealing all of the credit for himself. But my father treated Mr. Hamish in the same way as he treated anyone. Dismissively. With indifference.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon.
Şimdi ipuçlarını birleştirelim. Burada ipuçlarında bir şey yok ki. Olmuyor. Olmuyor. Niye bizi oraya gösterdi? Ha, şu an yok. Tamam. Şimdi. Şu Bayan White mıydı? Onun küçük serada olduğunu öğrendik. Küçük serayı bulmamız lazım şimdi.
Water Lily Greenhouse.
Şimdi bize haritalar lazım olacak şu an. Şu küçük sera bura değil mi? Neydi burası?
Dry Tropics.
Sıcak kuşak.
Dry Tropics. According to this, they have light and moisture control in some parts of the building.
Devam. Sherlock devam. Nereye geldik? Dry Topics. Şimdi biz şu anahtarları aldık mı? Aa bayan.
Look, Holmes, this charming lady
Bayan
must be
White.
Miss White. She's entering the seed house.
Acaba bunun buraylarla alakası var mı? Nereye girdi? Seed House.
Open.
Good day to you, miss. You have some very beautiful plants here.
Why, thank you, sir. And good day to you, too. But
Oh, I do beg your pardon. My name is Dr. John Watson. This is my good friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I am honored to make your acquaintance, gentlemen. My name is Margaret White. Excuse me, but are you Sherlock Holmes, the great detective?
Yes, I am he.
What a pleasure to see you here at Kew Gardens. Are you working on a case?
Yes, a theft of plants that took place here a few days ago after their most recent exhibition.
Oh, yes, of course. I quite forgot about that.
Oh, it's quite understandable that you might forget about the theft of the plants, miss, after the tragedy that took place here.
Yes. The director was a truly good man. It is such a terrible misfortune.
Would you happen to know why part of the colonial collection was cleared?
No, I have never been there.
How well did you know Mr. Montague Dunn?
He was a master, a great leader. I saw him almost as a spiritual father.
He had an exceptional nature?
Oh yes, indeed. He was always so active and so optimistic and very nice to me.
Oğluna sert
Although he could
davranıyorlar.
behave harshly towards his son.
Why so?
He loved his son dearly and wanted the very best for him. It made him extremely demanding. Albert, who is naturally shy, suffered because of it.
Bence o gözlüklü yaşlı olan adam var ya. Ben ondan şüpheleniyorum.
Most of the doors in Kew Gardens are locked. Do you have a key to this room?
Oh, yes. Albert gave me a set of duplicate keys. He agreed I might carry out my studies without disturbing him. It is only temporary.
The Divine Syndicate. Does that name mean anything to you, by any chance?
Not at all. But it is a very pretty name.
Do you work here?
Part-time only. I am a biology student at the London University. I attend the same classes as the son of Mr. Montague Dunn. That is how I found my chance to work here for part of my thesis, you see. It is a great honor.
Şimdi. Pahalı parfüm. Parfüm.
Thank you, miss. None of the 3 people who work at Kew Gardens know why half of the colonial collection was cleared. So, someone is lying. It is obvious. These leather gloves are new and of good quality. They do not appear to have been used. Materials for college study. They belong to Albert. This place serves as Albert's office. A book about ships. Nothing at all to do with plants. we are unable to see the interior of the colonial collection room. This is one of the outlets of the ventilation system.
Evet. Bay Montague onu öldürmek için kullanılmış önemli bitkiyi bul. Nerede bulacağız onu? Şimdi herhalde bu davada bir kişi daha var. Ondan sonra diğer davada da 3 kişilik bir dava herhalde. Bitiyor yani oyun. Pelegra yani uzun süreli beslenme bozukluğu sebep olur. Bir dakika. Birinci sayfası var. Bayan Margaret White görünüşe göre orta derecede zengin, güzel birisidir. Buna rağmen ellerinde küçük kahverengi noktacıklar görülür. Buna pelegra yani uzun süreli beslenme bozukluğu sebep olur. Tüm bunlar onun fakir ve mutsuz bir çocukluk geçirdiğini ortaya koyuyor. Ancak şu anda gördüğümüz zenginlik belirtileri hayatında önemli değişiklikler olduğuna işaret. Personel binalarını incele. Personel binaları. Harita var mı? Ne tarafta kalıyor? Sistem. Ben buradayım diyor. Officer. Personel binaları diye bir şey göremiyorum burada. Genel adı mı acaba bunların?
Just be careful with the plants.
Hah. Müdürün kasası. Şifre mi var? Bu password. Sola döndür. What? What? Şimdi bir daha buraya dönersek 1, 2, 3. Şimdi dönelim. 1, 2, 3. Dönelim. 1, 2, 3, 4. Geri dön. 1. Ay, 4 değil o zaman. 5 mi acaba? Yok. Bunu yaptık. Bunu yaptık. 1, 2, 3 yaptık. 1, 2, 3 yaptık. 5 mi yapacağız bunu? 5 yaptık. Geri dön. Aha! Yaptık. Ne varmış burada? Mektuba. Değerli arkadaşım, lütfen sana mektubunu okuduktan sonra yaşadığım hayal kırıklığını anlatmama izin ver. Sana beni savunman için para ödüyorum, beni suçlaman için değil. Bahçeleri bir kraliyet kurumudur. Dünya çapında gezerek en sıra dışı değerde ve çeşitli bitkileri almak için fırsatımız var. Görevimiz bu çeşit bitkilerin şüpheli amaçlarla kullanılmasına karşı korumak. Bahsetmiş olduğumuz bu kutsal sendika böylesine değerli bitkileri tutmak için hiçbir hakka sahip değil. 14 Haziran 1889 davasını hatırla. Bu yüzden senden bahçeleri adına bu bitkilerin izinlerini tasdiklemeni bir kez daha kibarca rica ediyorum. Belgeler sana pazartesi günü gönderildi. Not: her zamanki gibi salı günü Badles görüşmek üzere. Montague'dan. Avukatın yardımı. Neymiş? Şikayet mektubu almış. Baydan, sizden son defa sevgili kız kardeşimizi geri vermeniz için istekte bulunmalıyız. Ne? Sevgili kız kardeşlerimizi geri vermeniz için istekte bulunmalı. Onları hapsetmeye hiçbir hakkınız yok. Size ait değiller. Bahsetmiş olduğunuz izinler tamamen sahte. Yalanların arkasına saklanıyorsunuz. Üzerinde durmadığımız basında 14 Haziran 1889 davası olarak yayınlanan yalan gibi. Yaptığınız her neyse oldukça iğrenç. Aile üyelerimizi asla terk etmeyeceğimize emin olun. Size güvendik ve bunun için pişmanız. Kutsal Sendika. Oğlum, kimden bahsediyor ya?
I suggest that we don't tell Miss Margaret White about this document.
Tamam. Bayan Margaret White'ın Bay Montague'dan borcu. Borcu varmış. Oxford Caddesi'ndeki bir suite odanın kirası. Kirasını o ödüyor. Londra Üniversitesi'nde bir eğitim bursu. Hamilton'da açılan krediler Redingo's adlı dükkanda dikimler ve Baird & Sons adlı firmadan lüks mücevherler. Vay! Bunların arasında bir şey mi vardı? Arşivlerde ara. Kutsal Sendika'nın bir üyesi. Bahçeleri hakkında bir eleştiri yazmış ve gazetelerde 14 Haziran 1889 davası adıyla basılmış eski bir davadan bahsetmiş. Buna arşivde bakacağız. Bu bitti. Finish'im. Champagne.
Champagne. Montague Dunn had good taste.
Yine mi Fransız? Şampanya.
Champagne. Montague Dunn had good taste. French wine. A
Sure.
remarkable vintage. Newspapers discussing Kew Gardens.
Times. Bahçeleri ekibi yeni başarılı bir arpa çeşidini duyurmak gurur duyar. Soğuğa tamamen dayanıklı bir tür. Onu Sibirya arpası olarak isimlendirdiler. Aşının görkemli yetiştiricisi Bay Martin Hamish bu konu hakkında önümüzdeki pazartesi günü bir basın konferansı düzenleyecek. Başka bir şey yok mu burada? Bu muydu? Olması lazım ya. Bir şey olması lazım. Ama ne? Bu kadar mı? Heh. Ayrılma. Çok sevgili Margaret. Son konuşmamıza istinaden bahçelerindeki pozisyondan istifa etmenin daha iyi olacağına inanıyorum. Bana açıkça gösterdiğin gibi artık benim desteğime daha fazla ihtiyacın yok. Söylediğin gibi bu dünyada kendi ayaklarının üstünde durabilirsin. Sana özgürlüğünü geri veriyorum ve iyi şanslar diliyorum. Montague'dan. Enteresan. White ve Dan. White'ın kolunu nasıl? White ve baydan yakın zamanda bir fikir ayrılığı yaşamışlar. Montague'dan Bayan White'ı ev bahçelerinden çıkarmaya planlıyormuş. O mu yaptı acaba? Bu bitkilerle arası çok iyi o kızın. O olabilir. Ölümcül bitkiler çalındı. Zehirlenme. White ve Dan. Albert'ın hırsı. Ölümcül bitkiler çalındı. White ve Dan olmaz. White ve Dan. Albert'ın hırsı. Zehirlenme. Olmaz. Başka bir şey yok o zaman burada. Başka ipuçları bulalım.
What should we do next, Holmes?
Ne var burada?
A photograph of Montague Dunn and Reynold Hamish.
Just be careful with the plants during your inspection.
Let's go. Kutsal Sendika 1889 davası. Deniz Harbi sanması. Deniz Sindikat Kulübü Tanrı Kral Trevor'ın takipçileri tarafından 48 Grosvenor Sokağı, Carleton yolunda kurulmuştur. Bitkilerin ve özellikle ağaçtan koruyucular olan insanlar şimdi soruşturmayla yüz yüze. Bu kuruluşun liderleri finansal bir suç işlemiş. Bu soruşturma sonucunda hukuki işlemler uygulanmak zorunda kalınabilir. Aynı zamanda birçok insan bu soruşturmaya karşı çıkıyor. Hatta hedefi doğayı korumak olan bu özel kuruluşun birçok insanı etkilediği görülüyor. Rakip partinin siyasi temsilcisi de dahil. Doğayı korumak.
Here it is. And here is the Divine Syndicate's address. Perfect. It is time to find out what they have against Montague Dunn.
Kutsal Sendika. Let's go. Alacağım, bu bitecek bu gece. İlginç şeyler var. Neyse izlersin YouTube'dan ya. No problem.
This place is
İlginç
beautiful.
bir dava ama.
Its atmosphere is remarkably soothing.
Bruce Lee.
Let us find someone who could help us. Good day to you, sir. My name is Sherlock...
I am exalting the sap. A while can you wait? From the trace of elements and moreover from the quality of the ambient geotropism it depends. Therefore, please, mind my gravitropism. Its balance, do not disturb.
Disturbed is most definitely the word.
There. Completed is the symbiosis. Welcome you are. To introduce myself I shall. I am the Green Grand Mystic.
The Green Grand Mystic himself.
This is me. Who am I speaking to?
We are two gentlemen who are extremely interested in the vegetation philosophy that is advocated by this establishment.
Listening to you, I am.
We should like to take a look around, to immerse ourselves in the wisdom that emanates from here.
Büyük bir ihtimal
It
bunlar
is a
yap.
school of anastomosis, the divine scholastic syndicate for vegetation veneration and meditation. You may say, the divine syndicate. Glory to the eukaryotic. Only true devotees, those whose hearts are ready to spermatophize in sharing of knowledge, are permitted to physically enter our vegetable kingdom and its wisdom. And to be permitted, you must earn it. Yes.
We visited Kew Gardens, and we found your symbols on their
Bunların bir
flower pot.
halk yemesi var bu işte.
Coincidence, I am thinking. They would scavenge our refuse. It would not surprise me.
It was merely an observation.
Ready.
Green Grand Mystic, we are ready to become devotees and gain access to your temple.
What is the name of our Lord, our God King?
Our God King's name is Treewan, Green Grand Mystic.
Oh la, good, I like you. Here is the holy key to the wisdom place. Holy donation can you make whenever you so wish.
Thank you so much.
I pray you to taste our fertilizer substance. From the burdens of life it helps to free.
But of course.
Raw sap, it is called. It is near the entrance.
Bu adam çayırlı gelmedi bana ya. Kafayı yemiş. Kimyasal. Adam zehirlenmişti zaten. Ölen adam. Parmak nasırları.
Well, we will leave you to your meditation.
Ne izlediğini bu. Büyük yeşil büyücü, garip bir karakter, Çin işi bir dövmesi var. Sol avucunda belirgin bir yara mevcut. Kimyasal bir pipete gereksiz bir güç uygulamayla oluşacak bir yara. Kartezyen bir zihin gerektiren kimya ile uğraşmıştır. Kartezyen bir zihin gerektiren kimya ile uğraşmıştır. Bu herif tekin bir herif değil abi. Dım. İçerideki kim lan? O neydi? Kapı mı kapandı? Sen ne ayaksın birader ya?
You came to make a donation?
Tabii
Glory
donation.
to Tree One!
Ya.
This must be Triwan,
Nasıl bir
the
tip ya?
divine syndicate's god.
Buna mı tapıyor bunlar?
This door is locked, but I can try to open it.
Hayda. Döndür, hareket ettir, hepsini döndür. Değiştir. Hayda. Bu da ne böyle? Değişik bir anahtarla. Saksıyı çalıştır, saksıyı çalıştır. Böyle yaparsak olmaz. Şöyle yaparsak olur ama. Şu aşağısı uymadı ama nasıl olacak? Aşağı taraf uymadı. Şurası da uymamış. Böyle olmuyor. Tamam, bunu böyle bıraktık mı? Dönelim şuraya. Bunu buradan çıkartalım. Çevirelim şöyle. Şöyle yapalım. Böyle de olmuyor ki. Tamam.
These instruments are used for smoking opium. That would be enough to perform the most difficult of chemical experiments. Chemicals, a sufficient quantity for some serious experiments.
Buranın bir alakası var ya bu adamın ölümüyle.
Osmosis and photosynthesis.
Kafayı yemiş.
Caterpillars. They are raised as food for certain plants. Let's take them.
Niye aldık lan onu? Kullanım alanını bul. Tırtılları ne yapacağız?
A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. These three plants are identical to the ones shown at the exhibition. I shall take them. A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. A tropical plant. Nothing of interest. That should be the raw sap that the Green Grand Mystic spoke of. This is rather delicious, and of an excellent quality.
Ne yedik
My
lan?
word, Holmes. Their sap is like a form of cocaine.
Kafa güzel olacak. Eyvah eyvah.
A fragment of a flower pot. Fragments of a flower pot. It fell down here. The Kew Gardens symbol.
Hayırdır? işimiz bitti mi acaba? Şu adamın yanına bir daha gidelim.
Do you have friends at Kew Gardens?
None. Not worthy there.
Nasıl değil ya? Saksı üzerindeki
Do
sembol.
you have friends at Kew Gardens?
None. Not worthy there.
O zaman bir üstteki abi. Şu.
Nevertheless, we have seen Kew Gardens flower pots in your yard. How could they happen to be there?
What? Our sacred place you permitted yourself to search? Sacrilege.
No, really now. There was a theft of plants at Kew Gardens a matter of days ago, and we believe the pots we found here may be connected with it. Please tell us, were you involved?
No. Those plants were ours. They had stolen them from us.
How so?
Their director, Dump, I believe.
Done.
Yes, that's what I said. He borrowed from us 3 of our sisters for the exhibition at his green fly-infested gardens. But he never gave them back to us. Excuses and imbecility. So we went in and saved them.
I see. So, if you stole those rare plants from them, then it means... Ah, I get it. Bravo, Holmes. I think the case is solved.
No, we did not steal. We saved. Well, as a matter of fact, we were unable to find our 3 plants.
I beg your pardon. And yet you took all of the exotic plants from the stand.
They had disappeared. It was the least we could do. They stole our sisters, and so we stole theirs.
Well, we will leave you to your meditation.
Acaba. Acaba. Eksik şeyler var ya. Anlaşmazlık. Neyse, parçaları birleştirmeye devam edelim. Şuradan bir çıkalım.
Just be careful with the plants.
Şu bitkiyi bulalım ya.
Locked.
Wow.
There was a bottle here. It left behind a trace of the substance that pervaded the laboratory. Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around. Several drops of the substance were spilled. Someone carried this bottle around.
Gold dust? Good heavens. What's it doing here?
The gold is almost immune to chemical attacks, so it may be a valuable auxiliary for various experiments.
But why would anyone perform such experiments in a botanical garden?
The bottle is no longer here, but it is possible to detect a faint scent. We need a good nose.
Altın diyor birkaç değil. Kimyasallara şeydir, bağışıktır diyor altın. O yüzden deneylerde kullanılır altın tozu.
Chemicals, a sufficient quantity for some serious experiments. This student's book belongs to a botany book.
A phonograph used for voice recording. Remarkable.
Yes, this is quite a modern laboratory. I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything.
And it seems clear from these multiple experiments that plants do respond to their environment and have a form of consciousness. Margaret White, February 1895. Report number 245.
Study report.
O zamanlar ses kayıtları böyleydi tabi. Uğraştır.
Martin Hamish's perception of plants. The notion of communication in the plant world has long been considered marginal, yet I remain convinced that some plants do indeed transmit chemical signals in the event of attack.
A study report by Martin Hamish.
Kanıt gerekli.
This is a table for experiments. It resembles my own.
Only this one is kept in good order, Holmes.
Such masks are generally worn when dealing with toxic chemicals. Gloves, waterproof aprons, everything one might need for self-protection.
Do they grow dangerous plants here?
Tabii ki. Yeni mi almadın Mars?
Locked.
Nasıl
Holmes,
kilitli?
Albert Dunn didn't give us the key to this door.
It does
He.
not matter. We will open it.
Hadi bakalım. Oo yine mi ya? Yine mi? Şu işaretler ne? Hepsini döndür döndür. Oh. Bu da oynuyor. Bu bayağı karmaşıkmış. Şöyle yapsak. Buraya kadar normal. Böyle olsa da olmuyor ama ya. Orta taraf karışık. Şöyle olsa. Yok. Şöyle. Çok. Evet.
Open.
Aldı.
The employee's cloakroom.
Buraya bakmıştık. İçeri girelim.
Martin Hamish's locker. A review on rare and exotic plants. Martin Hamish has written. Father and I, Kew Gardens. Martin Hamish studied chemistry. Interesting. Albert's locker.
Hamiş bir parmağı var onun ama.
A picture of Miss White and Albert in front of the University of London.
And they seem to get along.
İlginç.
A rejection letter from the British Royal Naval College.
Garip koku. Köpek yine iş başında. Daha bitmemiş.
Specialist Albert Dunn has a great passion for shipbuilding and the sea. Miss White's locker. A draft of the letter that Miss White sent to her parents.
Sevgili anneciğim ve babacığım, size bu mektubu gönülsüz bir şekilde yardımınızı istemek için yazıyorum. Çalışmalarımın ev giderlerimin masrafı umduğumdan çok daha fazla tutuyor. Bu nedenle korkarım ki uzun süre dayanamayacağım. Geçmişte anlaşmazlıklar yaşadığımızı biliyorum fakat kızınızın parasızlık yüzünden çalışmalarında başarısız olmasına izin verecek kadar acımasız mısınız? Margaret. İstemkar bir mektup. Maşallah.
These jewels must be worth a small fortune. A vanity purse. It is of high quality.
Buna karşılık cevap vermiş ailesi. Vay. Patronla arasında şeyler varmış mı? Albert. Başka ne var?
Apparently, Miss White is a capable student.
Bunları bilmiyor. White ve Dunn. Bunlar örtüşmüyor hiç. Sendika mı öldürdü acaba? Neyse devam edelim. Şimdi şöyle yapacağız. Ofise bir gidelim Baker Sokağı'na.
Come on, Toby. We have some work for you to do. Let us go to Kew Gardens.
Bu da aynı hareketleri diyor. Watson kafayı yemiş ya. Watson sıyırmış ya.
Let us take Toby to the laboratory. He will pick up the scent of this mysterious substance. Search, Toby. Search.
Bir şey buldum.
Congratulations, Toby. Now let us see what you have found.
Gizli şişe.
This is the bottle that was used in the laboratory. It was buried here. There is still some liquid remaining
Aynı
in the
kurtçuklar
bottle,
var.
with gold
Kırtırlar.
flakes. A tiny caterpillar. Not surprising to see one in a garden, but at the bottom of a bottle.
Vay. Let's go. Oh, what's now?
Let us determine just what we have found here. Let us pour liquid from the bottle into a test tube to perform an analysis. This is the bottle that we found hidden at Kew Gardens. Let us use a pipette to take a sample of the liquid and fill a test tube. A colorless, water-based liquid. Quite a strong floral aroma.
Holmes? What are you doing?
It has a bitter taste.
What if it's poisonous?
Did you ever see poison stored in enormous jars like that? Anyway, there is a doctor nearby.
So what do you think it is?
It is some kind of organic compound. Let us vaporize the liquid and see what happens. Small colorless crystals. Colorless, tiny crystals that are soluble in water, with a floral smell and a bitter taste. Watson, could you pass me that small bottle, please?
Of course. Here you are. Holmes, do you know what it is?
Wagner's reagent. There was a label on the bottle that you passed to me.
No, Holmes, I meant the bottle that we found.
Let me add the reagent and see if there is any sediment, and then I shall tell you. I need to take a I need to take a pipette and make several...
Pipette.
Red sediment, just as I suspected. This liquid is of organic origin. It contains some alkaloid. Most likely it is unstable, and that is why there is a quantity of gold dust to prevent contamination. This mixture is probably a fertilizer. Someone was carrying out unusual experiments in the garden's laboratory.
O zaman oradaki laboratuvara gideceğiz şimdi. Ya da burada
According
mı
to the
yapmış?
deadly plants information, in order to perform our experiment, we will need fertilizer and food. Caterpillars should do nicely. According to the deadly plants information, in order to perform our experiment, we will need fertilizer and food. Caterpillars should do nicely. My analysis table. It is useful for my work.
Tamam. Anlaşıldı. Bura değil ya. Burası galiba.
This is a table for experiments. It resembles my own.
Only this one is kept in good order, Holmes.
Ee,
What should we do next, Holmes?
Mrs. White'ın olduğu yere gideceğiz o zaman.
Locked.
Ya da burası.
These young plants must be delicate if they are kept in the nursery.
Fidanlık. Diplomalar.
An award presented to Martin Hamish for
Yes.
Best Grower of the Year. A master's degree diploma. It belongs to Martin Hamish.
Ya.
A glasses case. It is empty. A thesis written by Martin Hamish. This area serves as Martin Hamish's office. This certificate belongs to Martin Hamish. He won a horticultural competition. This poster is for an exhibition that Martin Hamish was directing.
Bitmedi bitti ya. Uzunmuş. En uzun görevlerden biri bu. Bir o sauna muhabbeti, bir de bu. Bundan sonraki zaten küçük bir görev olacak. Küçük bir dava. Öyle görünüyor yani.
But it had no... We can see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room from this window.
Görsek ne olacak? Başka bir şey var mı? Şuna basalım, yok. Bu neymiş?
It is a bust of Montague Dunn. I am curious if the marble... Here it is. The marble fragment that we found in the Colonial Collection Room is what they have in common.
Buradan dışarı çıkıyor. Burada başka bir yer var mıydı? Şurası. Heh. Devam.
Poor Mr. Montague Dunn. It is so awful.
Hadi canım. Buradan bir şeyler alacağız herhalde. Tırtıl mırtıl bir şeyler diyordu. Bu nedir ya, bu pencere muhabbeti? Ben anlamadım bir şey.
From here, we are unable to see the interior of the colonial collection room.
Neden? Görmemizdeki sebep ne?
Poor Mr. Montague Dunn.
Burada başka bir şey yok. Bir de bu var. Bu pencereler ne işe yarıyor?
A ventilation system. It
What should we do next, Holmes?
Kimya laboratuvarı mı?
drop. This sign. No. I perceive that you are passionate about the Royal Navy.
Passionate? No, not really. I like ships, that is all.
Are you quite sure? You do not seem to be so interested in plants.
It's difficult, that's all. My future is here.
Uyku düzeniciyiz.
It's never been
Hepimiz
about
aynı.
anything else.
Görüşürüz kardeşim. Hadi kendine iyi bak. İyi uykular. Geleceğim burada. Hadi ya. Bunu sorayım dedim ama.
I perceive that you are passionate about the Royal Navy.
Passionate? No, not really. I like ships, that is all.
Are you quite?
It's difficult, that's all. My future is here. It has never been about anything else.
And yet I know that the Royal Naval College rejected your application.
Ah, you truly are as clever as they say. Yes, that's correct. And in fact, my father was strongly against the idea. He did his best to ruin my plans, although I almost did succeed. But my dreams were shattered, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again.
Ne diyor orada? Albert'ın babası Montagu'yu öldürmek için bir sebebi vardı. Allah Allah. Ben Albert'ın kraliyet donanmasına katılmasını hayalini engellemişti. Babasını öldürerek Albert intikamını almış olacak ve Kia bahçelerinin müdürü olarak babasının yerine girer. Allah Allah. Bak sen. Olabilir mi öyle bir şey?
A task list for Albert, compiled by Martin Hamish. Sweep out. Mr. Hamish, was someone from your family connected with Kew Gardens?
Family? No. I'm the only one with a passion for botany.
I do not think so. This photograph of you and your father at Kew Gardens suggests the opposite.
But you have no right to.
Do tell us more about your father.
He was, indeed, the greatest botanist of his time in the British Empire. He worked together with Montague Dunn until the end of his life. He brought me in at the age of 12.
Did he get on well with Mr. Dunn?
No, I couldn't say that. They expanded Kew Gardens together, that was all. And it was all my father's work, for Dunn always lived the high life.
So Mr. Dunn was not helping your father?
Oh, yes, he provided the financial support. And as far as he was concerned, that fulfilled his role. But the worst of it was, he declared himself as the master of Kew Gardens. Fame meant nothing to my father, so it was easy for Mr. Dunn to take all the credit.
There is a bust of Montague Dunn in the nursery.
A bust? Oh, that old thing. Further proof of that outrageous ego of his.
But why in that room in particular?
Oh, I don't know. It has always been there.
Allah Allah. Hadi canım. Allah.
It is strange, because I recovered a fragment of the bust inside the Colonial Collection Room.
Really? Oh, well, so I am mistaken. It ought to have been removed during the cleanup. This room is so small.
Do you know who moved it?
I have no idea. Surely Mr. Dunn requested it. Do you have any more questions like
Yalan
this?
söylüyor.
Because fragments of rock are not my responsibility.
Evidently. Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation.
Kimya laboratuvarı dediği yer acaba buradaki yer mi? Bir gidelim. Biz tırtılları almıştık ki.
The list of plant friends and benefactors, lawyers, well-known manufacturers, political leaders.
Buraya gelmemişiz lan biz. Wow.
These instruments are
Gelmişiz
used
ya,
for
geldik ya.
smoking opium.
Geldik. Deneyi burada mı yapacağız? Aldık
This
alkolu.
substance is an alkaloid, the
Oh.
same as in the bottle we found in
yere
the bushes
gelmiş.
at Kew Gardens. Perfect, Watson. We can begin our experiment.
Hayır.
That would be enough to perform the most difficult of chemical experiments.
Let's go. Biz buradan almamışız alkolü. Ya da aktif değil. Biz geldiğimizde.
I imagine that one of these plants would be capable of releasing a toxic vapor. I need to find out exactly how it could be done. I shall begin now. Watson, if you are at all optimistic to have dinner this evening, then I'd recommend that you put on the gas mask.
Şimdi ne yapacağız?
I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating.
What the?
I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism.
Bu şerefsiz hepsini kaplıyor ya. O zaman ne yapacağız abi? Önce bunu dökeceğiz, koyacağız.
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid.
Evet. Şimdi mi şey koyacağız?
I find the behavior of predator. How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alcohol. It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid.
Ve şimdi? Kapıyor adi ya.
It closed again. I believe I saw a small cloud of gas. I wonder what secrets this plant is hiding. Perhaps if we agitate it to a greater extent whilst it is open,
Açık
it
haldeyken
will
daha
reveal a
büyük
little
bir
more.
şekilde
I am
kışkırtırsak daha
interested in
fazla.
what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it.
Nasıl yani?
How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it.
Vurdu ya zaten.
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it.
Şimdi ne oldu?
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid.
Da, da, da, da, da, da. Eylem seç. Al incele.
A carnivorous plant.
Et
A
ol.
prickly plant.
Dikenli.
This is a strange and unusual plant.
Şimdi
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid.
pasifleşti.
I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. This
Bu ne
plant seems to
yapıyor?
have had no reaction from the caterpillars.
Bir dakika. Bir daha deneyelim. Böyle yapınca ne olacak? Bir bakalım. Bir şey olmadı. İğne? Ha. İğne dediği bu mu?
It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I
Saldırının
imagined
şiddeti
that its
mi?
reaction would be ferocious
Nasıl
if I
ya?
increased the strength of my attack.
Nasıl şiddeti?
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be
Şiddeti
ferocious
nasıl
if I
arttırıyoruz?
increased...
Başka bir şey yok. Şiddetini arttırırsak. Bir dakika.
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack. No reaction.
Şiddeti nasıl arttıracağız ya?
My It appears how interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it. It appears to have fallen.
Oh.
It appears to have fallen. My word! It shot a spike
Şiddeti
at me
neyle
after I
arttıracağız?
stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
Saldırının şiddetini arttırırsan. Şöyle yapalım. O zaman. Bir, bu.
This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars.
Nasıl göstermiyorum?
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. This plant seems to have had.
Hayda.
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
Buradayken tırtık koyuluyor.
I find the behavior of predators. This plant seems to have had no
Şu
reaction
an
from the
koyamıyoruz.
caterpillars. No reaction.
Kapanıyor.
It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. This plant seems to have had no reaction.
Buradayken tırtıl koyuluyor mu? Koyuluyor. Enteresan. Nasıl oluyor?
I find the behavior of predators utterly
Tamamen
fascinating.
etkileyici olduğunu düşünüyorum.
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would...
Nasıl arttıracağız?
My word! It shot a spike at me
Saldırma
after I
şiddeti.
stabbed...
Nasıl arttıracağız onu? Saldırının şiddetini arttırırsa. Nasıl olacak o? Burada bir muhabbet dönüyor ama anlamadım.
This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars.
Buradayken koyulmuyor. Buradayken koyuluyor. Neden acaba? Ah. Haydi.
How interesting. What a strong... I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that... This... My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength. It appears to have fallen... My word! It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed.
Şöyle yapayım. Bir dakika. Bunu önce anlaşım bunu al. Buna koy.
It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed.
Acaba ne yapacağız burada? Şiddeti arttır diyor da şiddeti nasıl arttıracağız? Böyle hız ayarlayamıyorsun ki.
My word!
Yeri neresi olacak acaba? Önce ortada mı durması lazım? O niye kitabın üzerinde de diğerleri kenarda? Şu bitki ne işe yarıyor ya?
I find find the behavior. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the...
Koy şuraya bir. Şunu şuraya al. Bunda hiç reaksiyon yok. Sıfır.
No reaction.
Ne oluyormuş?
It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
Yok. İstemiyorum. Muhabbet ne ya?
This plant becomes inactive after being drenched with alkaloid. I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating.
Devam mı? Üst üste yapalım bakalım. Ne olacak? Bir de iğne vuralım.
My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
Evet. Ne yapacağız ya? Anlamadım. Takip şeyi çalışıyor değil mi? Tamam. Okey. Bu sakinleştiriyor.
This
Of,
plant becomes
sırada bunu
inactive after
kullanamıyorum.
being drenched with alkaloid. I find the behavior of predators utterly fascinating. My word, it shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagine that its reaction... How interesting. What a strong and effective defensive mechanism. I am interested in what might occur if the prickly plant should shoot at it.
Dikenli bitkiyle vurulursam mı? Dikenli bitkiyle vurulursa.
My word, it shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I am... My...
Dikenli bitkiyle vurulursa. Şu ne işe yarıyor anlamadım ki.
My word, it shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagine that... No... It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. This plant becomes inactive after... My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. I imagined that its reaction would be ferocious if I increased the strength of my attack.
İyi de neyle arttıracağız?
No reaction. My word! It shot a spike at me after I stabbed it with a pin. It appears to have fallen inactive after being disturbed. My word! I find the behavior... This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars. Ma. No reaction.
Buradaki sıralama
It
nasıl ya?
appears to have fallen in. This plant seems to have had no reaction from the caterpillars.
Şu an
This
koyulmuyor.
plant seems to have had no reaction.
Ne olabilir ya? Alkaloid. Ne oldu? Aha!
It appears to open after being soaked with alkaloid. My word, it shot a spike.
Aha!
Toxic gas with spores. Extraordinary.
Nice.
The plants would be capable of killing only if they were directly next to the victim and stimulated at precisely the right moment.
Let us take our caterpillars to the Colonial Collection Room. We may see things more clearly there.
It is too early, Watson. Our suspects will be there. Let us investigate Kew Gardens one more time and ask some questions.
Olası. Ama böyle dursun şu an.
Can you tell me if you saw Mr. Montague Dunn on the day of his death?
Yes, of course. I met him, and we went to see Albert, his son, at around 9:30. He appeared quite calm.
What were you doing on the morning of the accident?
After paying multiple visits to Albert, I had a little talk with Miss White. Then I returned to my desk to complete some paperwork. Suddenly, I observed that Mr. Dunn was not feeling well, so I ran immediately to fetch Albert. I clearly remember that it was around 10:30, for I was late that morning.
Thank you, Mr. Hamish. We shall continue our investigation. Dry. Water.
Burası değil mi?
These plants come from all the territories of the British Empire.
Tamam. Şimdi burayı açtık. O zaman gideceğiz. Makinenin olduğu yere. Buraya ya.
A ventilation system. It should regulate the temperature of the staff.
Evet.
A ventilation system. It should regulate the temperature of the staff buildings.
Lan çıksana. Ne diyor burada şimdi? Bir de orada şu an kimse yok ki. Konuş.
Can you tell me what Mr. Dunn was doing upon the day of his death?
I can, but there is nothing very special to say. I was in the laboratory when I saw Mr. Dunn heading towards me. Tuesday is the day of his weekly visit. It was supposed to be at 9, but he was 10 minutes late, as usual.
And then?
Well, he came in to say good morning. Then I saw him spend 2 or 3 minutes by the plants outside the laboratory. After that, he ran out in the direction of the nursery, where Mr. Hamish was working. He was always in a rush during the inspection, you see. I would pity anyone who stood in his way.
And that was the last time you saw him?
Yes. I stayed in the laboratory until 20 minutes to 11, when I heard the cries of Albert and Mr. Hamish from the large glass house.
I joined them as soon as I could, for I knew that something must be very wrong.
What exactly were you doing in the laboratory?
I was recording an experiment for my thesis. I only stopped my work once when Mr. Hamish visited me briefly around 10 o'clock.
You say you were recording an experiment when the tragedy occurred. Might I listen to the roll?
Certainly. Please do. You will find it in the laboratory. It is number 320.
Thank you, miss. According to this, they have light and moisture control in some parts of the building.
O zaman şuraya gideceğiz.
This green, grand, mystic fellow seems rather suspicious, Holmes. What should we do next, Holmes?
Yüce yeşil mistik.
Locked. Locked.
Anlaşıldı. Kutsal Sendika.
Follow my path.
Bilemiyor o zaman ya.
Osmosis and
Kimden bahsediyor ya?
A vast amount of opium. Fragments of a flower pot. It fell down here.
Bunlara baktık zaten.
This green, grand, mystic fellow seems rather suspicious, Holmes. We should search every inch of this place.
Bu adam değil mi ya? Başka bir yer daha mı var burada? Anlamadım ki. Üst tarafa çıkılıyor mu? Eğitmen. Bunu demiyor. Bunu diyor ya. Aa, şuradan gidecek bir yer daha mı var? Ha. Buraya gelmiştik, evet. Burada değil. Kim gidiyor acaba? Yüce yeşil mistik. Watson burayı incelememiz lazım dedi.
osmosis, and photosynthesis.
Yok abi, burada bir şey yok.
This green, grand, mystic fellow seems rather suspicious, Holmes. We should search every inch of this place.
Kimden bahsediyorsun Watson ya? Tamam abi, bu adam bunu diyor.
Follow my path, and better you will fear.
Ne diyorsun ya?
Follow my path, and better you will fear. Follow my...
Acaba. Böyle bambaşka bir tarafa gidiyorlar. Sendikaya çıktı yine olay ya. Danny Albert öldürdü. Hayda. Şimdi böyle çıktı. Başka delil var mı?
Follow my path, and better you will feel.
This green, grand, mystic fellow seems rather
Buradan
suspicious.
çıkamıyoruz.
We should search every inch of this place.
Olay burada diyor. Abi sendika ile alakalı bir durum var bence. Şimdi bir saniye. O zaman işi sendikaya yıkalım. Yeterli tecrübesi. Marty Hamish'in bir sebebi vardı. Onun ve babasının yaşadığı hayat Dan tarafından çalışmalarına itibarı çalınarak mahvedilmişti. Hamish ki bahçedenin yönetimleri geçirmeyi istiyordu fakat Dan hala hayattayken bunun mümkün olmadığını biliyordu. Evet. O zaman şöyle yapalım. Tarikat karışmadı. Şimdi konuşabiliyor muyum?
Follow my path.
Bununla konuşmak için büyük bir ihtimal buradaki delilleri sendikaya şey yapmamız lazım, götürmemiz lazım. Nasıl yapacağız onu? Tarikat planı, tarikat karışmadı. Tamam, karışsın. Tamam. Sendikaya nasıl çıkartmıştık biz bunu? Albert. Oğlu mu şimdi suçlu? Yeterli tecrübesi yok desek. Kısmen. White. Danny'i White öldürdü. Hayda, şimdi de White çıktı ya. White'a daha fazla şey gidiyor ha. Sendikaya nasıl çıkarmıştık biz bu sonucu? Sendika sıyrıldı mı şimdi bu işten? Tarikat. Sendikaya çıktı şimdi buraya. Dur bakayım.
Follow my path, and better you will fear. Follow my path, and better you
Burada bir
will
olaylar
fear.
var ama sonuçta bizi buraya yönlendiriyor. Kırık parçalar.
A fragment of a flower pot.
İçeriye bir daha bakalım. O ne? Ha. Buradan geçiş yapabiliyoruz ha. Tam dört tane şüpheli var ya.
Just be careful with the plants during your inspection.
What should we do next, Holmes?
It appears as though the protective equipment is missing from here.
Neredeler?
I don't hear anything.
Martin Hamish's perception of plants. The notion of communication in the plant world has long been considered marginal, yet I remain convinced that some plants do indeed transmit chemical signals in the event of attack.
A study report by Martin Hamish.
And it seems clear from these multiple experiments that plants do respond to their environment and have a form of consciousness. Margaret White, February 1895. Report number 245.
Study report.
White ya da Hamish. Bu ya da o kadın ya. Bence.
Ne?
koleksiyon.
Poor Mr. Montague Dunn. It is so awful.
A ventilation system. It should regulate the temperature of the staff buildings.
Bununla alakalı bir şey yapacağız ama.
Water lily greenhouse.
Şunu da açalım bakalım. İkisini de açmış olduk havalandırmasını. Şimdi geri dönsek motorun olduğu yere bakalım ne olur.
A ventilation system. It should regulate.
Pencereleri de açabiliyorduk değil mi biz?
From here, we are unable to see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room.
Bunlar niye açılıyor?
What? Your father's death does seem highly suspicious. What were your movements here on that day?
Suspicious? Well, I was working in the seed house, taking care of Lysa something, or Lear Pontus, or... No, wait. Ah, these Latin names. And I spent so many hours trying to memorize them.
Did you see your father that day?
Yes. He came here with Mr. Hamish for his weekly visit. There was nothing unusual about that.
And then?
Nothing. They stepped out to the backyard. It was perhaps 20 minutes before 10 o'clock. Then about 10 minutes later, I saw my father heading for the dry tropics room while Mr. Hamish returned here.
And Mr. Hamish and Miss White, what were they both doing that morning?
Mr. Hamish visited me a couple of times. I also saw him returning from talking with Miss White, and that was at 10 minutes past 10. But then he ran back here to me to tell me that my father was feeling unwell. We hurried across to the water lily room, and I found my father lying dead on the floor. Oh my God.
Thank you, young man. We shall see you again soon.
Everyone has gone, Holmes. The way is clear.
Odadan kaçmak.
No, it wasn't like that.
Bu şekilde değildi. Böyle bir şey mi oldu ya? Kendi kendine mi oldu? Aha. Zehirlendi. Kafasını taşa mı vuruyor sonra?
When Montague Dunn was standing close by the plants, the caterpillars were released and caused the deadly spores to activate. Panicking, and likely already half asphyxiated, Montague Dunn started back and knocked over the bust. He rushed to the door, but it was locked. He had to force it open with his shoulder. We already know the outcome. Montague Dunn collapsed and died not far from the pool. Well, it is time to perform our experiment on the ventilation system. The caterpillars could only fall from the ventilation duct. Our caterpillars are in place. I'll activate the ventilation system so that they fall down. Watson, stay here and observe.
All right, Holmes.
Tamam. Şimdi onu çalıştıracağız işte.
Now, the power is on. The engine cannot be started whilst the transmission is active. The engine has started. The ventilation system is working.
Now we need to see if we can activate the fans from Mr. Hamish's and Albert's space.
Pervaneyi mi? Hamiş gitmiş buradan. Pervane nerede ya? Nereye gitti bu adam? Bu da yok.
Excellent. This ventilation fan is working.
Ha,
Let us see if I can activate the other one. This is one of the outlets of the ventilation. From here, we are unable to see the interior of...
diğer pervane neredeydi lan? Burada mı?
Dry tropics. What?
Now we need to see if we can activate the fans from Mr. Hamish's and Albert's space.
Çalışma yerlerinde.
No.
Buradan çalıştım.
From here, we are unable to see the interior of the Colonial Collection Room.
Diğeri nerede ya? Buradan geçtik ya. Şu taraftan gitmiyor değil mi? Buradan gidiyor. Şu tarafta. Burada bir yerde. Bir taraf kapalı işte. Şu sol taraf. Akış yok. Aha.
Perfect. Now I just need to find Watson to check the result.
It works perfectly, Holmes. Bravo. Now, if you could just help me to get rid of these caterpillars.
Perfect. Now we know how the murder of Montague Dunn was carried out, by activating both Albert's and Mr. Hamish's fans.
But only from Mr. Hamish's workplace would it be possible to see when Montague Dunn entered the Colonial Collection Room.
parçaları birleştireceğiz. Tarikatta bir işi yok ya. Yani öyle gözüküyor ama öyle mi?
Let's go to Scotland Yard.
Gidelim. Gidelim.
I must admit, it would be rather unusual to use a poisonous plant as a murder weapon.
Niye geldik buraya?
A beautiful... This was... A membership card for... Locked.
Watson bizi buraya niye getirdin ya? Ha.
Inspector, I believe that Martin Hamish is guilty of the murder of Montague Dunn.
Aha! I knew it. I'll send the lads around to arrest him.
Very good. I shall wait to hear from you. Inspector, I came here as quickly as I could.
Martin Hamish is in the large glass house. There's no need to hurry.
What should we do next, Holmes?
Buradan.
Holmes,
Ah.
my God!
Yes, we found him like that.
Our messing around with the ventilation system didn't go unnoticed. Mr. Hamish realized that we knew.
Inspector, could you arrange the body, please? I should like to examine it.
Hayda. Depo dediği ne ya? Burada herhalde depo dedi. İntihar etmiş adam. Yok, burası değil. Orada bir yer. Depo neresi ya?
Nursery. Drop.
Niye depo ayrıca ya? Götür morga inceleyelim ha.
What?
Depo nedir? Uğraştırıyor ya. Hah, buram.
The mark around the neck is very visible. He died instantly.
Mektup. Pişman olmuş.
Holmes, his left shoe is unique. This anomaly is often a characteristic of...
A club foot. Bravo, Watson. That is the key element of this case.
Ama